All right, so I'm with Michael Wesch from Kansas University, Kansas State. I'm sorry. And what is your understanding of we? How do we learn in the age of the internet?
How do we learn? Well, I think obviously collaboration and participation are the new buzzwords of learning, and I think I guess some people have actually thought about the web as actually a hyper-personalized environment, a hyper-individualized environment. So the we is out of it by some people's reckoning, but when you really start to look at it, it turns out that we actually learn more in groups, like when we're sharing information and working together. I think that's a big part of it. But also, I teach these huge classrooms of 400 students, and when I look out into that audience, I'm really thinking about how can I get all of their intelligence to work together so that we can do something really amazing. If you think about what one person can do, that's interesting, but when you think about what 400 people can do when they all work together, that's really interesting. So my job has become increasingly more about how can I harness the collective intelligence of these 400 people in front of me rather than just lecturing at them.
So about harnessing collective intelligence, how does that work in your class when you're doing this concept of anti-teaching?
Yeah, well, so anti-teaching is to me all about inspiring good questions, not just telling them the answers. Teaching is all about delivering the answers. Anti-teaching is about inspiring good questions. And so what I do is I try to, from the very beginning, inspire questions that really matter. Get them out of the mode of thinking about what do I need to memorize for this test, and get them in the mode of thinking about what do I really need to know for this test of my life. Our lives, the challenges that we're going to face and that kind of thing. So once they're involved in that, I think they'll do just about anything. So then what we do is we think about, because it's a class on anthropology, which is about all humans in all times and all places, we break up the room. They take these 400 students, and each student becomes an expert on some small aspect of humanity at some point, in some place, throughout all time. And between all 400 of us, we become really intelligent. And then as the semester builds, we try to share that information through wikis or through whatever tools we can manage, even face-to-face environments. We try to create an environment where we can harness all of that knowledge that we've generated throughout the class and work together. Yeah.
And how do your students accept that? Because it sounds like a lot more work.
Yeah, it is more work. But there's this great quote. I think it's by Nietzsche. He says somebody who knows why will put up with any how, and when they know why it's significant, why it's meaningful, why it's important, when it is important to them, they'll really put up with any means. Even though it's a struggle and even though it's more difficult, most of the students will dive right in and do it because it's meaningful to them.
What would you recommend to other professors who want to engage their students much like you do?
I think it starts with with just loving and respecting your students, recognizing that they are very intelligent, important people who have a lot to share with you and with the world, and thinking about how you can unleash that rather than just, there's a big difference between treating them as somebody who's like an empty head that you're going to fill with information, and instead thinking about them with love and respect and thinking about, these are active learners and they have something to contribute. And that flips the dynamic of the entire classroom, and I think it really brings about a great environment.
And what would you recommend to institutions? How can they embrace this open web and this revolution that's going on out there?
I think they need to make sure that they create spaces and forums where people can come together and share the ideas that they're developing on doing exactly what we're talking about, and inspire one another and that kind of thing. I think that's the role of the institution, really, is to create the structure for a community, and a community that's striving for answers to these questions. The questions that we're now approaching about learning, the answers are changing every 5 minutes as the information landscape changes. And I think we need a community center. We need places to meet, come together and discuss these things and inspire each other. So.
And are tests obsolete when students have their mobile phones and can Google any answer instantly?
I don't think they're quite obsolete, but we have their importance, I think, goes down a bit. I think that when people do learn a new perspective and a new way of viewing the world, they're also learning a new language. And you can always test somebody on their new language skills, you might say. So I think there's always a role for the test, but it can't be 80% of the grade or something like that. It has to be diminished and allow for more possibilities. I think the test is still important, but it can't be the centerpiece of a learning environment.
And for a student, what would your recommendation for them be? How to embrace these tools and empower their own learning?
Well, I think just harness your joy in playing with new things and not be afraid of these things. The weird thing about these tools is we often assume that students are fluent in them. It turns out that they're very fluent in the things that they use in their social life, like Facebook or whatever it might be. They're very good at entertaining themselves on YouTube or wherever else it might be, but they're not yet good at really harnessing this media environment to accomplish other things. And so that's where we come in, and we have to inspire them. And sometimes all it takes is sort of pulling back the curtain and saying, you know what, you actually are doing something amazing here when you are pulling these people together on Facebook and creating these groups. You're doing something important and you don't even recognize it. So the first step is just showing them that what they're already doing is amazing and can be put to use to do amazing things. And then secondly, once you do that, then it really opens the doors so that they can do other things as well.
So if you teach or train pupils like this, what does this mean when they are finished, when they go into the workforce? There has to be a change as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, we hope so. I think that what I hope to create is a more participatory individual, somebody who's ready to participate in the world in whatever capacity, really fully, not as a passive consumer, but as like flipping the tables and being more active.
What's your view on mobile learning?
Mobile learning, I think, is right now it's really at a content delivery stage where you can get, a lecture on your iPod, this kind of thing. It's not yet at the interactive stage, and I think certainly not in the United States anyway. And a lot of that has to do with the service providers in the U.S. Make it difficult for the students to have a situation where you have 100% of the students having texting and internet capacity. In fact, in my situation, I have about 80% students have unlimited texting, which is great, but in terms of internet capacity, it's very low. Somewhere, certainly under 20% actually have access to the internet through their mobile phone. So I think that as that changes, and I think it will, and as people actually have an totally mobile internet device, then we're really going to see something unleashed that maybe we've never seen before. The possibilities will be really tremendous at that point. Just to give you an example, in my class, one of the things I plan to do in 3 years when that happens is actually creating a learning environment. It would take forever to explain it, take an hour to explain it, but essentially it would involve two-dimensional barcodes and RFID sort of embedded in the campus environment that would be learning opportunities for them in their everyday life, and we would actually try to create a playful yet serious learning environment that would extend into their everyday life through the use of mobile phones. And like I said, it would take forever for me to explain exactly what I have in mind, but I think it's exciting to think about what other professors will come up with as well, because here I'm thinking about it, I'm just one person. What'll be really fun also is when you stand up in front of 400 students and you say, look, we don't have to be constrained by these walls anymore. These are the things we want to learn throughout this semester. This is what we want to learn about. These are the questions we're pursuing. And you all have these little devices that will actually allow you to grab any information from anywhere, into your pocket. And what can we do now? Like, how could we harness this? And then let the 400 students start to brainstorm how we could approach these questions in new ways. I think the possibilities are really, we can't even grasp them at this point.
It seems that if I can learn anytime, anywhere, and you're saying the walls of the classroom become unimportant, do I actually still need to go to school? What's the point?
You definitely need to go to school because community is still the key, and that comes back to the we question that you started with. we inspire each other and we allow each other to find out what's relevant. Because in a sea of information, it becomes all about what's meaningful, relevant, and significant. And we learn those things through connections with other people. And that's why the we becomes so important. So.